the day. My name is Edoe Dimitri Agbojan. I'm the director of the CLEAR Center for Francophone Africa. As you probably know, the CLEAR centers, we are 5 centers across the globe. We are implementation partner of the GEI, of the Global Evaluation Initiative. And we support the governments in strengthening their national evaluation system through training, advocacy, capacity building activities, technical assistance, knowledge generation and sharing activities across the various regions. In our approach in strengthening the national evaluation system, we often undertake national M&E system or capacity assessments. It is a key component of our approach because we use that as a tool to get an insight into a specific country in order to develop a proper strategy for strengthening the national evaluation system. That's why within our network, under the umbrella of the GEI, we have worked to develop the national M&E assessment tool, the MESA, which is available now on the website of the GEI. It's open access. You can download it and use it if you like. We have the privilege today to talk about how national M&E system assessment is conducted in various countries. And we are very lucky to have seasoned professionals from various countries, from Zambia, from Mozambique, from Peru, from Madagascar, and from Jamaica, who will be sharing their own experience in implementing the national M&E system with you. So my goal is to make sure that we leave this room with some thoughts on how those systems can be, those assessments can be undertaken, but also some tips on how to improve what has been done so far. On the panel, we have one panelist who will be speaking from online, who will be speaking from, because he didn't manage to travel to Turin, so he will be speaking online. But I have the privilege to introduce to you Mr. Craig Barham from Jamaica, who is the Chief Technical Director of the Performance Management and Evaluation Branch of the Office of the Cabinet. And he's also, he was Senior Director for Strategic Planning, Performance Monitoring, and Project at the Ministry of Tourism in his country. And one thing very important that you need to know about him is that he really liked James Stewart, the movie star. So if you also like Jimmy Stewart, he's the person that you need to talk to after the panel. I also have the privilege to introduce to you Mr. Jorg Akimo Sipanela from Mozambique. He's the National Director of M&E system at the Ministry of Economy and Finance. He's very committed to monitoring and evaluation. He knows everything about monitoring and evaluation in the country. So if you like to learn more about the experience in Mozambique, please feel free to talk to him after the panel because he will not have enough time to explain everything that he knows about the country. And we are not very gender sensitive. You only have one female among 4 misters and guys. But I have the privilege to introduce Madame Prudence Kauma, who has worked in the field of monitoring and the evaluation in the Zambia public sector for 19 years. She has coordinated the diagnosis of the government-wide M&E system. She also facilitated the national evaluation capacity assessment in her country, Zambia. And who like the movie Beauty and the Beast? Who? No one. Okay, that's her favorite movie, Beauty and the Beast. So if you don't know about that movie, please talk to her after it. And then I have the privilege to introduce Mr. Ramiandrizoa Olivier, who is the General Director at the Ministry of Economy and Planning. He's also a lecturer in the Department of Economics at the University of Antananarivo in Madagascar. He's passionate about the nature. He likes hiking, camping. So you can, if you have the opportunity to go to Madagascar, he will be very pleased to help you do some hiking and camping. And last but not least, we have Professor José Enrique Velasquez from Peru, who is the General Director of Monitoring and Evaluation at the Ministry of Development and Social Inclusion. And he's also professor at the Faculty of Medicine of the Universidad Peruana Cayetano Heredia. I hope my Spanish is good enough. He plays basketball and he's married with 2 girls. So we have a very good panel, and we hope, we are sure that with their support, we'll be able to get a very good insight into how assessment of the national evaluation is implemented across their countries. So I will ask them some questions, and then we will have a Q&A session so that you can comment on what they will say, and maybe share also your own experience. And I trust you to make this a very active and productive session. So my first question for the panelists is just to invite you to share your own experience in undertaking the assessment of your national evaluation system. How did you start? What was the rationale behind that? And what were the various steps in implementing this assessment? So please, I'll start with the only lady on the panel, so Mrs. Prudence.
Thank you, Edoe, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And greetings from Lusaka, Zambia, where I'm coming from. I'll speak about our experience in terms of undertaking a monitoring and evaluation system diagnosis in Zambia. Before I start, I would like to just set a context to say that in Zambia, the importance of M&E is well recognized by the government and other stakeholders. And when we look at our setup, if you go to the National Assembly, we have an M&E department that is supporting that institution to analyze and package evidence for use by parliamentarians in their debate. In the presidency as well, the executive, we also have an office of advisor on monitoring and evaluation to promote evidence-based decision-making in the presidency and to interact with the government implementing agencies in order to get information that's coming out of the M&E system. Then the Ministry of Finance and National Planning has been given the mandate to coordinate the implementation of the national monitoring and evaluation policy that we have in place to ensure the institutionalization of monitoring and evaluation and promotion of a culture of results. So from, I think, the structural arrangements that I've just mentioned here, it is evident that in the country we recognize the importance of monitoring and evaluation, that it is important, and the policymakers have actually seen this importance. Coming to the question, we have undertaken a number of diagnostic exercises on our national M&E system. And I have participated in quite a number of them over the last 19 years. The first exercise we had was undertaken around 2014 and 2015, where our ministry actually had visited other countries such as South Africa, Uganda, India, Mexico, on study tours to understand how they are running their M&E systems. Because of this importance that policymakers really recognized, and they really wanted to see a robust M&E system also in Zambia. So after undertaking these tours to other countries to see how they run their systems, we realized that before we implement our government-wide monitoring and evaluation system, we needed to understand the situation that existed in Zambia, because we've had some support that had come to several sectors to build their M&E systems and also to develop some capacities. So the first thing we did around 2014, 2015 was a government-wide assessment of the M&E situation. And we did this by looking at several factors, but mostly this assessment was localized around looking at the systems for generating data and information, analysis, as well as packaging of that information and dissemination. So it was, and also looking at its government readiness, just e-government readiness, to see how the systems that supported the M&E process were functioning and whether they were automated and how the supportive mechanisms were working. So that was the first exercise. And mostly we had a set of independent experts who came in to work with our Department of Monitoring and Evaluation, which was in the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, which was spearheading this process of the diagnosis. So we did really learn a lot of things from the experts that were hired with support from some of our cooperating partners. But mostly this exercise, it was a government-wide assessment, but it was also sector-based because it zeroed in on the sectors to look at what was happening there. And then to look at how that could be replicated to come up with the government-wide monitoring and evaluation system. From that exercise, we learned that the capacities were, especially the M&E capacities that in most of the government institutions were weak. A few institutions, maybe health, education, water and sanitation, and a few others had experts who were able to support this function, and they had the equipment and the supportive environment in terms of policies and frameworks. But most of the other sectors did not have the supportive environment and their capacities were low. Notwithstanding, we went ahead and came up with a national monitoring and evaluation policy that we thought would help guide the process of institutionalizing M&E across government. And this was launched in 2020. We also realized from interaction with others that we needed to have a national performance framework that should guide the long-term results that the country should aspire to in terms of socioeconomic development. So we developed that also around the same time. We also adopted a more results approach to our national planning frameworks and also encompassed the roles of Parliament to see how their oversight function can be improved so that they support the culture of results. In 2018 to 2020, we also undertook another assessment. This is upon being connected to the Center for Learning and on Evaluation Results, CLEAR, which is a partner agency of the Global Evaluation Initiative. CLEAR supports national governments to strengthen their M&E systems. So we got support from our regional office, which is based in South Africa, who came over to Zambia and worked with us to look at one of the key areas that was identified as a weakness when we did the initial assessment. And this was mostly around capacity development. So CLEAR came on board. We did undertake a diagnosis of the system by looking at the policy environment, the stakeholders who supposed to be part of the system, the capacities, and also looked at how adequate our coordination function was in terms of supporting the system for strengthening capacity enhancement across the government. But we also actually looked at the supply and demand side in terms of how is it that the service providers for capacity development, such as the academia and other institutions, would come on board to support this process of capacity enhancement. So this was done with support from CLEAR. And we did come out with, from this support, with a strategy to promote enhancement or review of the curriculum for M&E that was being conducted at the University of Zambia, which has since been enhanced to strengthen the aspect of evaluation. That was one of the key products of that assessment. And later on, around 2020, we also had an assessment that involved the use of the MESA, the tool that has been developed by the GEI, and this was administered in our national parliament so that we could assess the status of the M&E system to support the oversight function of the National Assembly, so that as a sector, it can be able to support the processes. So this also resulted in a strategy for strengthening capacity of the National Assembly in M&E. This is our experience from Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation of the experience of Zambia. So the next will Mr. Craig, please, on Jamaica.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd first like to thank the GEI for the opportunity to sit on the panel and to share the stage with my colleagues here. So our journey in Jamaica started in about 2007. So we've been doing this for about 15 years. And it's part of a long-standing process of restructuring government reform. It really started first with, in the 1990s, looking at the entire structure of the civil service and how well that civil service was performing, delivering services to the public, etc. And so, you know, diagnostics were done around that in the 1990s. And by the 2000s, we adopted national development planning. So between 2007, 2009, we came out with our national development plan called Vision 2030. And that started in about 2010, rolling out 3- and 4-year cycles. So in that period between the 1990s, 2007, there were a series of reforms of the civil service, looking at customer service excellence and how we delivered service to the public. And then national development planning comes in. And the logical extension to kind of make all of this work better was to adopt results-based management. So in our particular context, although it is not necessarily formally stated so, monitoring and evaluation really falls under the wider umbrella of results-based management. And that is something that we're now trying to reinforce and to formalize that concept, so as not to have these frameworks and terminologies sort of be discrete areas of professional excellence where no one is speaking. And my colleague from South Africa, I noticed she was talking about sort of the different silos between policy. That is something that over the years did creep into our situation, and we're trying to correct that by putting everything under the sort of the framework of results-based management. So our 4 pillars are results-based management, results-based budgeting, because we have more recently adopted this medium-term budgeting framework, results-based procurement. So I'm not directly involved in that per se, but I'm supposed to make sure we align with that. So that's another thing we're doing recently. And of course, results-based monitoring and evaluation. So we have been talking about evaluation quite a little while, but it's really a matter now of putting everything under one umbrella so that it all coherently and cohesively works. Now, the main players involved in this are the PMEB, the Performance Management and Evaluation Branch, going back to 2007, although it was called a slightly different name then. And that is centered in the Office of the Cabinet. So my unit sits at the heart of government, and we are supposed to work with and coordinate with the ministries, of which there are a total of 18 at the moment. It changes up and down one or two every now and again, but we're at 18 now, to embed results-based management across government And then these ministries are supposed to cascade it down to the 150 agencies and departments that fall under them. In reality, what has happened now is that the ministries are fairly advanced in the process, but unfortunately, for various reasons, and we all know the capacity constraints that we all face, the 150 agencies most of them are quite behind in the particular process. So over the next 5 to 10 years, one of the important things is to bring them on board. So from 2007 to now, the system has been evolving. After 15 years, you would think it should be quite mature, and it is to a point, but in certain ways, it's still a teenager, in other ways, it's still an adolescent, and in certain ways, still a toddler. When you do things in this sort of incremental and fragmented way, you find that different people are at different stages of development and understanding. With hindsight, which is 2020, if we had done things differently, I think we would have started with, more comprehensive diagnostics and getting to know exactly what the system has. How many ministries and agencies you have, how much staff exists now, what are the capacity gaps. Over 15 years, we sort of know some of these issues by working in the system, but the deficiency of sort of doing it backwards is that you don't always have this information at your fingertips that you're confident to say, this is exactly our resource situation now, and this is the precise gap. We could only generally say what we have and generally say what we need. But I would still say that in spite of the challenges and some of the weaknesses of the system, we have been in the 15 years heading in the right direction. I'm confident that we have, but I can confidently say we have not gone as fast or as far as we could have if we didn't do this sort of incremental, fragmented approach to developing it. But that unfortunately tends to be how we do a lot of things in Jamaica. And maybe it's the same for the rest of the world, I don't know. So what does it mean for the system in a nutshell? Yes, there is this, if you look at it, you might say the system looks fairly mature and comprehensive on paper, because we have so many things that were put in place over the years, templates and guidelines, but we never had a formal policy. So what you have are problems of the quality of the output. So we have gotten to the point where every ministry now produces a strategic plan and an operational plan every year. That's great. Took a few years to get them to get to that point where every year they would get this thing done. But then if you look at it, there's a great difference in quality between the 18 ministries. A few have very good plans, but some of them not so good. So quality control is a problem. Right now, there is a focus on planning, which is, I think, what we have really emphasized for the last 15 years. So although we've been talking about monitoring and evaluation, planning has really been what people have prioritized, because there is a rule that says you are to submit annually to the Ministry of Finance and the Office of the Cabinet and the PIOJ your strategic and operational plan. So what gets measured gets done, it's submitted, but then what you find is that, and we added, you have to send us quarterly reports as part of monitoring. So monitoring has been improving a little bit, but evaluation is far behind, and often tends to be done when international development partners require it as part of a loan. Sometimes it is done, but not anywhere to the extent it could or it should be, because fundamentally without the policy, there's no requirement as there is to do your strategic plans. So we find that putting these, and I think South Africa mentioned the same thing earlier, putting these things, the regulations in place does make a difference. And of course, a big problem is insufficient capacity to make it work. So even when you do have ministries that are trying to do so, sometimes the staff that are available, one person is tasked to do everything, planning, monitoring, evaluation is just impossible. So of course they prioritize what has to be delivered, and then what when they run out of energy, the work stops. So we are hoping that over the next few years, we're trying to sensitize people that they need to go back to the Ministry of Finance and indicate what is that capacity gap. Here are the requirements that you're now expected to meet. what are the human and other resources you need to meet it. So people will say, yes, we don't have enough money and staff. But in truth, some of that problem is the fact that not everybody has been proactive in going to the Ministry of Finance and saying, all right, you want us to do this? I have one person, but I need 5. You give me, 200,000 US, but I need $1 million. And in truth and in fact,
need to wrap up.
some of the ministries have been, in this particular situation. But recently we have done a diagnostic with the support of the World Bank, with our colleagues from Mexico, which I think was good, because the Mexicans, having gone through this thing and are, a middle income country, I think they understand our situation very well. Report was very good. And what we're trying to do, the report now, is to sensitize key stakeholders. And we're also coming up with a roadmap of things that the diagnostic identified that need to be done. So in a sense, we're doing monitoring and evaluation of the diagnostic itself as we try to implement this thing to make sure that we deliver on these key results that have been identified. So we're very hopeful with this diagnostic and the evidence that we can show people where we are, where we'd like to be, and the gaps that need to be formally filled over the next few years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very food for thought for each of us. What about the situation in Mozambique? What was your experience, Mr. Jorg?
Sim, muito obrigado. Muchas gracias. Yo voy a hablar en español, a pesar de mi lengua es portugués, pero voy a tratar de hablar en español porque son las condiciones de tradición que existen aquí. Hablando de experiencia de Mozambique en el desenvolvimiento del sistema de monitoría y avaliación, decir que el gobierno de Mozambique creó la Dirección Nacional de Monitoría y Avaliación como la entidad responsable por el monitoreo de la implementación de la acción gubernativa. Y durante ese proceso fueron hechos avances significativos en la componente de monitoría y avaliación. La dirección es encargada de producir los relatorios periódicos del desempeño de las actividades de historia del gobierno, y el gobierno tiene la obligación de prestar cuentas a la Asamblea de la República. Y mirando esa responsabilidad, la dirección tiene esa particularidad de crear condiciones para que los reportes sobre el desempeño de los programas de implementación de políticas públicas sean hechos dentro de los periodos que se encuadran dentro de la apreciación de cuenta que hay que hacer el gobierno perante el Parlamento. Pero nosotros avaliamos que en términos de monitoreo y avaliación había sido hecho progresos significativos, pero la grande dificultad y grande reto se encontraba en la componente de avaliación. Y esa componente de avaliación, a pesar de ter oído en el panel anterior referencia de que Mozambique se hace avaliaciones, la verdad que el país tiene estado a hacer esa avaliación y una perspectiva un poco tímidas, o son iniciativas isoladas y no en una perspectiva institucional. Y hoy, mirando en todo ese contexto, se vio la necesidad de se trabajar rápidamente en la construcción de un sistema de monitoreo y avaliación, dando primacía a la componente de avaliación. Y para que se llegue a resultados en relación a su sistema de monitoría y avaliación, y en particular la componente de avaliación, fue necesario primero saber cuál era la situación del sistema en el país. Ahí sí, el gobierno, con el apoyo de sus parceiros, y en este caso con el apoyo de la UNICEF y CLIA para África y Brasil, fue hecho un trabajo profundo para hacer el mapeamiento, hacer un diagnóstico sobre la situación real, un examen objetivo de la situación de monitoría y avaliación en el país, identificación de sus desafíos, en español se dice los retos y oportunidades para fortalecimiento del sistema de monitoreo y avaliación en el país. El diagnóstico fue hecho en 2021 y que permitió hacer un mapeamiento claro de todo el cuadro institucional y legal en relación a la actividad de monitoría y avaliación a todos los niveles, a nivel de órganos centrales, así como a nivel de los sectores del gobierno y provincias. Permitió también la identificación de todas las rutinas, los procesos y prácticas de monitoría y avaliación en los órganos del gobierno, así como a nivel de las instituciones de la sociedad civil en el país. Uno de los grandes problemas en ese proceso era la necesidad de saber cuál es la demanda real y la oferta que existe en el país en términos de avaliaciones y de actividad de monitoría, así como ese ejercicio permitió identificación clara de las potencialidades y oportunidades para la implementación y fortalecimiento de un sistema robusto de monitoría y avaliación en el país. Esa metodología de diagnóstico fue un proceso inclusivo, tanto con el apoyo de CRIA fue posible desenvolver inquérito para recoger, coleta de toda la información necesaria para hacer lo que se puede decir la fotografía del sistema de monitoreo y avaliación en el país. Y con base en ese diagnóstico, fue posible el país ir caminando para desenvolver o desarrollar las capacidades de monitoreo y avaliación en el país y en particular la componente de avaliación. Y estamos trabajando en esa línea. Tenemos la asistencia del CRIA que está apoyando el gobierno a todos los niveles para el desarrollo del sistema de avaliación en particular, porque esta es la componente más complicada. Nosotros hemos estado a hacer avaliaciones y tienen sido publicadas a nivel del gobierno, porque hay una demanda de información a nivel de la sociedad civil y del parlamento, así como de los parceiros, para saber cuál es la situación del país en términos de implementación de sus políticas públicas, qué impacto esas políticas están trayendo para la población. Hemos hecho con regularidad las avaliaciones PEFAS, la avaliación de gestión de finanzas públicas, y esas han sido con regularidad publicadas. Pero el grande desafío es la avaliación de políticas y programas públicos. Ahí sí es un grande reto y estamos trabajando para crear condiciones para que el país cree capacidad para pasar a hacer ese tipo de avaliación dentro de un sistema robusto. Sabemos que tenemos desafíos de información. La generación de información es un problema, acredito que para todos los países, y en particular los países africanos, porque la parte de información estadística de calidad es uno de los grandes problemas que estamos teniendo, en particular en mi país, y se está trabajando para que el Instituto Nacional de Estadística, que tenemos del país, que es la entidad responsable de producir datos estadísticos oficiales, para que ella sea fortalecida y que possa colocar información sobre la actividad económica y social a disposición del público y sirva esa información para alimentar todo el ejercicio también de tomada de decisión en la formulación de políticas públicas. Estamos trabajando en ese sentido para que rápidamente el país tenga un plano de desenvolvimiento de capacidad de altura para permitir implementar sistemas de monitoreo más robustos en el país. Obrigado.
Thank you. Now we are going to fly to Madagascar. Mr. Olivier, please.
Merci, monsieur le modérateur. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Avant de répondre à la question, Permettez-moi de remercier juste brièvement les organisateurs de nous avoir donné l'opportunité de participer à cette conférence et particulièrement à ce panel. Nous sommes très honorés de cette considération. Pour répondre à la question, à Madagascar, nous avons notre système national intégré de suivi et évaluation, au SNIS, depuis 2008. Et dans ce système-là, à travers ce système-là, on sort un rapport chaque année de suivi des programmes du gouvernement. On a 47 programmes et on sort les résultats du suivi de ces programmes-là. Et c'est ça qui nous permet, c'est ça qui permet à l'exécutif particulièrement, par exemple, d'échanger avec les parlementaires chaque année. En 2020, on a effectué le diagnostic de ce système. C'était la première fois et ça nous a, en quelque sorte, si vous voulez, réveillés d'un long sommeil. Ça a secoué, ça a beaucoup secoué dans la mesure où, premièrement, à l'époque, ce n'était pas évident pour nous de concevoir qu'il faudrait évaluer un système qui est censé évaluer déjà dans le pays, donc évaluer l'évaluateur. Et deuxièmement, les résultats obtenus à travers ce MESA, ce Monitoring and Evaluation, Monitoring and Evaluation System Assessment, les résultats obtenus à travers cette évaluation-là nous ont particulièrement surpris. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on s'est rendu compte qu'en plus de 10 ans, parce que ça va de 2008 à 2020, on a exploité ce système national-là en pensant qu'on fait de l'évaluation, mais effectivement, on ne l'a pas vraiment avancé dans ce sens-là. On n'a fait que suivre les indicateurs. On met à jour chaque année les indicateurs et les valeurs cibles et on essaie de voir est-ce qu'on a atteint les valeurs de cible ou pas. Ce qui nous permet pas du tout de voir qu'est-ce qui allait, qu'est-ce qui n'allait pas. Quel ajustement devrait-on faire? Effectivement, il y avait des évaluations sporadiques qui ont été faites, mais ces évaluations-là, comme le cas par exemple du programme de vaccination ou programme de supplémentation en vitamine A pour la santé, mais ces évaluations-là ont été faites essentiellement par les partenaires techniques et financiers du pays. Cette carence en culture d'évaluation ou cette insuffisance d'évaluation est en fait due à plusieurs facteurs. Mais je vais en évoquer principalement 3 facteurs. Premièrement, il y avait l'absence de documents cadres. On n'avait ni plan, ni politique d'évaluation à l'époque. Et sans cadre, il serait quand même pas évident de procéder ou d'avancer dans ce sens. Et deuxièmement, comme ce qui a été évoqué depuis ce matin, c'est pareil, il y a aussi le manque de ressources financières. Madagascar est un pays en voie de développement. Et déjà, pour chercher des financements pour financer les actions, on a du mal à en trouver. Donc, ce n'est pas évident de consacrer une ressource en part entière à l'évaluation. Et troisièmement, c'est pareil comme la plupart des pays aussi qui ont été soulevés depuis ce matin. Il y a la carence ou l'insuffisance de ressources humaines. On a suffisamment de personnel, mais c'est la ressource humaine compétente qui est capable de mener de manière adéquate l'évaluation qui manque. Oui, je termine, monsieur le modérateur. Bon, c'est sur ça que je voulais en finir. Merci, merci beaucoup pour...
Yeah, I was saying we are in a new normal where technology is part of our life. So now we are going to listen to the next panelist from Zoom, Mr. Velasquez.
Buenas tardes, Edoe.
Okay.
Buenos
have the
días y
floor.
buenas noches para quienes nos acompañan en otro horario. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Un saludo cordial a las personas que me acompañan en la mesa, aquellas que se encuentran de manera presencial y a quienes nos ven a través de las diferentes plataformas. Como siempre, es un placer compartir un espacio de discusión y de reflexión sobre seguimiento y evaluación y cómo disponer de un ecosistema propicio. Muy contento de participar. La institución a la que pertenezco es el Ministerio de Desarrollo e Inclusión Social del Perú. Es uno de los ministerios más jóvenes en el país. La semana anterior cumplimos 11 años, pero además es el primer ministerio en el Perú que contó en su organización con una Dirección General de Seguimiento y Evaluación. Reconociendo la importancia de contar con un sistema de seguimiento y evaluación que brinde soporte a la toma de decisiones basadas en evidencia. Con agrado, podemos decir que esa ha sido una de las marcas diferenciales de nuestro ministerio desde sus orígenes. A pesar de ello, debemos reconocer que en nuestro país, como en otros países de América Latina, la cultura de seguimiento y evaluación constituye un proceso dinámico que ha tomado mayor protagonismo en los años más recientes. Las labores de evaluación en esa línea inicialmente se concentraban en la academia y en organizaciones y cooperantes que tenían acciones de asistencia técnica al Estado. Actualmente, actualmente son acciones que se comparten con las que realiza el Estado. Eso ha cambiado, como comentaba, en los últimos años. Si bien se han realizado diagnósticos anteriores sobre la situación del seguimiento y evaluación en el Perú, el más reciente corresponde al realizado el año 2020, el segundo semestre del año 2020, con apoyo del Programa Mundial de Alimentos, el Instituto Alemán para la Evaluación del Desarrollo, de BAL, y la Oficina de Evaluación y Supervisión del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo, en el que se hizo una evaluación nacional de las capacidades de evaluación. Se utilizó un instrumento construido con la participación de más de 25 instituciones en el mundo y eso le brindó un respaldo adicional al estudio que se realizó. Para resumir, los resultados principales que mostraron, que se mostró con este estudio, fue primero que contábamos con un marco normativo suficiente para contemplar procesos de evaluación en todas las instituciones públicas. En nuestro país se viene implementando desde el año 2008, 2009, una gestión por resultados en donde el seguimiento y la evaluación constituyen pilares fundamentales. Dos entidades en el país tienen roles clave en evaluación. Uno, naturalmente, es el Ministerio de Economía y Finanzas, que inició la implementación de evaluaciones de impacto como instrumento de el presupuesto por resultados. Y el otro constituye el Centro Nacional de Planeamiento Estratégico, lo que aquí denominamos CEPLAN, que tiene funciones en evaluación estratégica de planes, políticas, programas y proyectos, y que además nos permite mirar en adelante el vínculo que hay entre la política, la planificación, idealmente, porque no siempre se da, con el presupuesto. Existe en el país una heterogeneidad en la implementación de la normativa sobre evaluación. Vimos que es suficiente para la labor que se realiza en el país, pero la implementación es heterogénea. Hay un avance diferenciado, no solamente en el nivel nacional, en las entidades públicas que pertenecen al mismo, sino también que la situación se ve mermada conforme uno va a otros niveles de gobierno. Al nivel regional, el Perú tiene 25 regiones, y al nivel local, donde en el país esto corresponde a distritos, y el país tiene 1.875 distritos distribuidos en todo el país. Solo algunas de las entidades, 7 de 18 ministerios, cuentan con lineamientos de evaluación. El MIDIS es uno de ellos, el ministerio al cual pertenezco, y elaboran además un plan anual de evaluaciones. Este plan además permite articular acciones de evaluación con el presupuesto para asegurar su adecuado desarrollo, que es quizá una de las limitaciones principales que vamos a ver rápidamente en un momento. Para la formación en evaluación de planes, programas y proyectos, la oferta es insuficiente en lo que corresponde a formación de recursos humanos. Solo 3 universidades en el país tienen diplomados que abordan de manera conjunta el monitoreo y la evaluación, y creemos, según el mapeo realizado, que se requieren más. Hay a nivel nacional una coordinación insuficiente y articulación de los distintos grupos en la toma de decisiones sobre la agenda, las prioridades y los procesos de evaluación, que es el otro aspecto que también debería ser fundamental, complementario e integral. Y para finalizar esta participación, comentarle que los retos que encontramos naturalmente están en función a cómo generar un ecosistema propicio que promueva el seguimiento de la evaluación como aspectos fundamentales para continuar tomando decisiones basadas en evidencia, y que éstas además puedan posteriormente asegurar su implementación, es decir, no solamente generar los resultados de la evaluación, sino que estos resultados terminen en recomendaciones lo suficientemente específicas, claras, y que faciliten el proceso de implementación de las mismas en los programas o en las instancias evaluadas. La toma de decisiones con acciones de mejora en esa línea deben tener un correlato con los diferentes niveles de gobierno, pero también con la participación del sector público, no solamente, sino del privado, la academia, la sociedad civil y las agencias de cooperación. Reconocer que los sistemas de evaluación y su capacidad de respuesta además son dinámicas, un aspecto que creo que nos golpeó mucho, y seguro que a todos los países en el mundo les pasó lo mismo, es que el COVID develó muchas carencias que teníamos como país, pero también constituyó un aspecto de mejora y una oportunidad para poder trabajar sobre ello. El alcance de la planificación y la orientación del presupuesto debería tener este correlato también entre política, implementación de la misma a través de una estrategia adecuada de planificación, y cerrar con el tema de disponibilidad de presupuesto, en donde los mecanismos de evaluación tienen un rol sumamente importante para poder asegurar que el presupuesto se realice con una calidad de gasto suficiente para poder mover resultados en el país y la población. Muchas gracias nuevamente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Velasquez. What we are hearing is the assessment is very important. It helps the various country despite their differences, they are different level in implementing and strengthening their national evaluation system. The assessments help them to have a better understanding of various components of the system, of the ecosystem of the monitoring and evaluation system in order to strengthen, to improve their strategy. What we also hear from Ms. Prudence is the fact that they have used in Zambia various tools to conduct those assessments. So my next question for you, Ms. Prudence, is how was your experience using those various tools? Especially, you mentioned the GI MESA tool as one of the last experience that you have. How that experience differ, how those various experiences differ, and what have you learned from that?
Thank you. From our experience, we noted that with other diagnostic approaches, really they tended to be more focused on either a sector-wide approach or just government-wide diagnosis of the M&D system, mostly just looking at processes of collecting, analyzing data, and disseminating of this information. The role of the supportive environment for the M&D functions of the national M&D system were not part of that assessment. And also the legal or policy framework assessment was missing. And also the institutional framework, such as the political structure or basis for that M&D framework, that was not part of the assessment before. We also didn't have any reference towards the national statistical system in terms of how it sits within the framework of the M&D system. There was more of a localized approach to the diagnosis. But when you look at the MESA, we see that it is more comprehensive or holistic in the sense that it's a framework that looks at promoting the identification of key stakeholders in the constellation of the M&E space. And also it facilitates common understanding of what an national M&D system is from the stakeholders that have been mapped to be part of the system. So we are able to get consensus in terms of the key elements of that system. And also it helps to converge across the key objectives of an M&D system so that it's very clear what that M&D system is meant to deliver, and also how the various stakeholders or entities on the demand side or the supply side are required to play their role in terms of articulating the processes that need to be followed to build a resilient M&D system. Thank you.
Thank you. And you also mentioned that there are a lot of, there are some challenges in implementing the assessment. So I would like to ask Mr. Craig, if you can share with us some of the challenges that you face in Jamaica and how you manage to overcome those challenges.
Well, I'm going to start at the top, where often the problems do actually start. So one of the challenges that we have is that our senior civil servants, who are very hardworking, very busy, what we have discovered is that many of them are not really fully understanding of results-based management and evaluation. They heard the terminology, but a lot of them don't really fully understand it or have embraced it. Part of this has to also do with the requirement to comply with certain things. So what you find is that they're very busy delivering what the rules require them to deliver, and they work very hard on that. But of course, because we don't yet have our R&B policy in place, that is not necessarily a complete requirement for them. So they don't put as much effort into it. Also, the truth of the matter is, and this is for within these walls, a lot of our senior civil servants are inherently risk averse. That's part of our civil service culture. And as a result, a lot of them fear that M&E may expose deficiencies and gaps we all know are there, but then you're going to now formally have them come to light. So this is something that's very concerning, especially when they consider that some of the problems that they face are outside of their control. So are you going to end up having the spotlight put on you for something you don't really have the resources and the time and the mandate to fix? So although I'm highlighting this, I'm very sensitive as to why they behave this way. And I suppose it boils down to the fact that as we implement these things, we have to be very cognizant of the incentives that we put into the system to ensure that people respond the way that we'd like them to respond and not in some perverse way. Another problem we have is our politicians. We have a public accounts committee in Parliament that works fairly well, but that's a creature of law. And again, in Jamaica, whatever is on the books, we actually, in spite of all our challenges, we tend to follow the rules quite well. And if the incentives are lined up with the rules, things work well. But our politicians, although they utilize this public accounts committee to ask questions, it is not integrated in any way with the emerging evaluation system that we're putting in place. So part of what we have identified with the GEI team and the diagnostic is that there has to be three important levels of sensitization. Senior management within government, the leadership of government, they have to be made into sponsors, champions, as well as consumers of evaluation information. Then the politicians also have to be educated and sensitized, because at the end of the day, they are also going to drive it. If they demand it, that gives an additional level of oversight. And then I firmly believe that civil society, we have a strong civil society set up in Jamaica, very, very strong, very independent, very lively, but maybe not necessarily as technically savvy as we would like. And as a result, I don't really see where most of them are consumers of evidence-based information to drive the work that they do, which a lot of it is good work, but not necessarily informed by the evidence. And I think as evaluation evolves, this also gives them information to work with and makes them part of it. And but the last part I would say is the RBM policy that's supposed to be rolled out between now and March of next year. That's going to be critical to institutionalizing what we've been doing for 15 years, setting common standards, a common language, goals and objectives that everybody has to rally around. I think that is going to be very important. So institutional building and capacity building and sensitization of key are the three sort of pillars going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like the rest of the panelists to summarize their answers, because we would like to provide the audience the opportunity to ask you additional questions. But my next question is how, because you undertake those assessments in order to improve your system. So how do you use the outcome of those assessments in the process of strengthening your national evaluations? If you can just provide very briefly 1 or 2 examples of how you use those outcomes, that would be great. So I will start with Mr. George.
Muchas gracias. Sí, las principales prioridades que nosotros tenemos después de elaboración de diagnóstico, prácticamente muy rápidamente reconstituir e institucionalizar el sistema de monitoría y avaliación. Y eso presupone en la compañía de avaliación el desenvolvimiento de un plano de desenvolvimiento de capacidades que va asociado con todo un conjunto de tareas, por ejemplo, la capacitación que hay que hacerlo a todos los niveles de la gobernación. Y estamos con el apoyo de CLIA en este momento a trabajar en la elaboración del manual de avaliación. Y ese es un instrumento muy importante. Nosotros no tenemos una política de avaliación, pero tenemos la componente de avaliación, monitoría de avaliación dentro de una ley. Y esa ley establece la obligatoriedad de todas las instituciones, a nivel de todos los sectores, de crear unidades y mecanismos de monitoreo y avaliación. Y nosotros, concluyendo, es una oportunidad muy grande para que el país avance a todos los niveles en la creación de sistemas de monitoría, avaliación robustos a todos los niveles. Y tenemos también recientemente envolviendo a la sociedad civil, que es extremadamente importante. La sociedad civil es un actor muy importante para el diálogo en el establecimiento de monitoría y avaliación. Y tenemos una sociedad de monitoría y avaliación que fue recientemente creada, que envolve una red de avaliadores independientes. Es una iniciativa nueva y el gobierno está apoyando esa iniciativa para tornar el proceso más robusto, más inclusivo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Without any transition, Olivier.
Merci. Comme je l'ai soulevé tout à l'heure, parmi les résultats du diagnostic, hein, il y avait le manque de document 4. Donc, pour avancer, on a en 2021, on a élaboré la politique nationale de l'évaluation. On est actuellement en train de voir les démarches administratives, voir les démarches administratives pour mettre en œuvre et mettre en pratique cette politique nationale-là. Et deuxième point, deuxième résultat qui a été sorti du diagnostic aussi, c'était le manque de capacité comme a été soulevé. Et grâce à l'appui des partenaires techniques comme le PNUD, l'UNICEF et puis l'appui technique du CLIR, hein, du centre CLIR, on a pu commencer à avancer davantage dans cette question-là en formant les acteurs du secteur public. Et même de notre côté, du côté national, on a fait déjà pas mal d'efforts ces derniers mois en approchant aussi les universités et en collaborant avec les universités pour qu'on puisse avoir plus de formation sur les techniques à jour en termes d'évaluation. Voilà, merci.
Merci, Mr. Velázquez.
Sí, muchas gracias. Los resultados que nosotros obtuvimos con el estudio permiten construir una agenda de trabajo igualmente participativa, porque lo fue en el diagnóstico, que tenga un alcance intersectorial, y ya comentamos quiénes son los involucrados, y también intergubernamental, entre los diferentes niveles de gobierno. Creo que el tener una evaluación o un diagnóstico de la evaluación en el país nos sirve como un punto de partida, pero genera compromisos posteriores. Entonces, ha planteado retos importantes para ajustar la visión de las capacidades en evaluación a corto, mediano y largo plazo. Y bien debemos reconocer espacios que son muy específicos y particulares, debemos reconocer también que hay varios complementarios y que va a involucrar a espacios amplios. En esa línea, nosotros estamos trabajando de manera conjunta entre 3 instituciones, que es el Ministerio de Desarrollo e Inclusión Social, el Ministerio de Economía y Finanzas y Centro de Planificación Nacional que les comentaba hace un momento, para poder trazar acciones claras que las vamos a llevar al nivel nacional y a los otros niveles de gobierno. Entonces, en esa línea, por ejemplo, reconocer que en el país, en los niveles regionales y locales, para el año 2023 tenemos nuevas autoridades, nos ha abierto una brecha de oportunidad que podemos trabajar. Entonces estamos mirando la actualización de documentos que puedan ser alcanzados a través de una capacitación mínima dentro de un paquete que involucra obviamente la identificación de la evaluación como un aspecto crucial y el uso de la misma para poder tomar decisiones en diferentes espacios. En segunda instancia, el Ministerio de Desarrollo e Inclusión Social está en la actualización de su Política Nacional de Desarrollo e Inclusión Social, que está en el proceso final de aprobación, que incluye además un abordaje que es respaldado en la evidencia, en la evaluación y en el seguimiento. Y uno tercero que va hacia la implementación del seguimiento y evaluación en los documentos país que trazan la ruta que el Estado ha seleccionado y los compromisos hacia adelante. En esa línea tenemos a la política general de gobierno, a los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, a los compromisos en esa línea al 2030 y la visión del país al año 2050. Todos estos mecanismos involucran una sección específica que resalta las funciones de seguimiento y evaluación sobre este diagnóstico que se ha comentado. Y eso, para cerrar el comentario, involucra además acciones específicas que pueden terminar incluso en mecanismos de incentivos que tienen un resultado interesante en otros niveles de gobierno como el regional y el local. Gracias.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Velasquez. I think all of you have a lot of things to say about this assessment process, what your own experience in your various country. Unfortunately, we have only 5 minutes left, but I still think that it is important to give you the floor, at least for 2-3 questions. So we will take 3 questions or comments, and then we will wrap up. So first question, so I will start with the ladies, please. So you can start, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Thank you very much to all the speakers. My name is Matodzi Amisi. And I just want to make I don't know if it's a comment or a question, I do, but okay. I think as I'm listening, I'm thinking, if we were to ask public servants, they will probably say the problem is with us and all the tools and instruments that we design. And I think in a way, we sort of plan for countries and systems we would like to see and not what actually exists in reality, the people we really have, their capacities. And I guess maybe the promise of tools like NESA is to help us do these assessments more intelligently so that we can really understand what's going on at a country level, at sector level, and then work from where that sector or that country is at, not where we wish they were or where we would like them to be, but where they really are. And in that way, then we can, coming back to the topic of the conference, we can really build in resilience, because we can't build resilient system if we are starting off with this idea that we have and not necessarily where countries are. So I don't know if that's a question, but that's just like a thought.
Yeah. For the input, you have the opportunity to comment on that on the left. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Saidu Amara. I am a director in the Directorate of Monitoring and Evaluation in Sierra Leone. I have seen a lot of presentations. Zambia, for instance, is 8 years, Jamaica, 15 years, Mozambique, 14 years, etc., etc. We are actually the new guys on the board. And with all your presentation, I see myself as maybe on a trajectory of, time and outputs. We are actually progressing, because all what you have presented, I think of what is the political wave of each of these countries you are coming from. We started in the last quarter of 2018. Exactly just 4 years. We started with the president putting this in his manifesto. It's a new government that is committed to development and ensuring that public investment programs are thoroughly monitored and evaluated. So we started by sitting in hallway, conference room, and they move us. We started from scratch. And as of today, we have a dynamic system. We have a strong office space. We have a strong staff, technical staff, not only taking people from all walks of life, but these are professionals in development work. And I think the political will is very important in all of this, because we started in the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development. In just 1 year or less than 1 year, the presidency saw that it is necessary to bring the directorate in his office so that he can have direct oversight of the directorate. So I think, looking at what you have presented, I just want to know what is the political will of your governments in supporting the M&E system in your countries. For instance, you're talking about policies and systems and so forth. Just 2 months ago, within the 3 years, we have developed the M&E policy, the M&E framework, the communication strategy for M&E, the SOP, etc., etc. All those have been developed within this period, and it has been passed by cabinet just last month. So I want to share that experience. If any one of you can respond, the political will you have in your country to carry this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and then Deputy Young.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. And I would like to thank all the presenters, the panel, for the points that they have put across. My name is Cyprian Chilanyang. I am from Uganda. I am a commissioner in local government. So I am the civil servants that Greg was talking about. But just on a lighter note. But the point really is, I would like to make a suggestion, really, and it's in line with use of the evaluation results. So I agree with Greg to some extent that the civil servants are averse to the results that may come out of an evaluation. But most importantly, I think the bigger point is, can the recommendations be put into action? I guess that is the bigger point. Yeah. So, and this is out of the hands of the civil servants. Mm-hmm. It goes directly into the hands of the political leaders, and especially the members of parliament. So I'm just making a suggestion. We've come here today, and my assessment is most of us are the civil servants or civil society, or maybe that kind of caliber. Is it possible for UNDP or at a higher level? And I know that as the governments, individual governments, we can organize an engagement like this for our members of parliament, because look, they're the ones who vote the resources to begin with. Number two, they're the ones who pass the legal framework for an evaluation to be done. So these are very important people in the picture of evaluation. So my point is, we can attempt as countries to carry out this organization, but what impact will it have on the members of parliament? For us, we've been able to come here today, and I will tell you that we've done a lot of learning and we've done a lot of realization. So probably if the UNDP could think about targeting those kind of people in their own way, probably is the way forward for us to be able to put into use this information. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. And we have actually a parliamentarian in the public, and she has raised her hand, so I will give her the floor.
Merci.
Okay, good to know.
Merci. Éléonore Zois, je suis députée de Madagascar, présidente de la commission évaluation des politiques publiques. Première question. Les évaluations que vous avez réalisées de vos systèmes nationaux d'évaluation vous conduisent à repenser vos structures et votre cadre. Ce faisant, quelles améliorations vous paraissent nécessaires et de quel soutien vous pensez avoir besoin indépendamment de l'aspect financier? Et deuxième question, nous sommes sur les systèmes nationaux qui sont nécessairement ambitieux puisque vous devez couvrir l'ensemble des politiques nationales. Mais n'aurait-il pas été plus judicieux, et je dirais, est-ce qu'il n'y a pas une solution à redescendre au niveau local ou régional et avoir une démarche d'apprentissage, parce que c'est aussi ça la culture d'évaluation, et initier un modèle sur des politiques plus, je dirais, plus réduite pour arriver à mobiliser la volonté politique des dirigeants qui sont, il faut le dire, souvent insuffisants. Voilà, merci.
Thank you very much. I can see a lot of hands raised. I really appreciate that. But unfortunately, I've just been told that we have to stop because there is a closing session after this panel. So I'll just turn back to the panelists and ask two of them to respond to the to answer the questions. Mr. George, do you want to comment?
Ya, muchas gracias. De forma muy rápida, en términos de la voluntad política, yo creo que es un asunto que fue colocado ahí. En Moçambique, la voluntad política está presente en ese proceso, por eso que el gobierno aprobó por vía del Parlamento la ley. Es una ley que obliga a las instituciones solo a crear mecanismos de monitoría y avaliación. Ese es un proceso que va a implicar también desenvolver y mudanza y creación de cultura de avaliación, de uso de resultados de avaliación. Estamos haciendo reformas que decorren de los resultados de avaliación, por ejemplo, en la área de gestión de finanzas públicas. Yo creo que es un ejercicio muy importante para no solo para informar, como también para permitir tomar a decisión con base en evidencia y resultados de ese proceso. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Mr. Prudence, anything to add to the comment?
I think on political will or the other questions.
Yeah.
On the political will, I recognize the fact that it's very important that we have champions at the highest level, at the highest level of decision making. Sorry. We should have political will at the highest level of decision making, such as the presidency, cabinet, and parliament. In Zambia, we have an advisor. As I mentioned earlier, in Zambia, we have an advisor in the presidency on monitoring and evaluation. And so all the products that come from the M&D system are referred to that office for further processing and communication. The policy briefs that go to Parliament and the policy briefs that are sent to the presidency are processed through that office, and the information is communicated for feedback and also for actions to be disseminated to the relevant implementing agencies that require to act on the recommendations. So political will really takes different shapes. Some people are based in the presidency, others are based in the directorates or ministries of planning or finance, but it depends on how the system really is structured in terms of getting the feedback mechanism to the highest level and whether you have the champions there. Thank you. And I think most importantly, the political will is also highly let me say relevant when we can actually rally the resources that are required to support the monitoring and evaluation system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this is not the end of the conversation. The panelists are still here. They will be here for the next 2 days. So please feel free to be in touch with them to raise your question or to have a discussion with them. And thank you very much for your participation. I hope that you really enjoy the session, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you. Thank you very much.
Hello. Oh.